Days turned into weeks, and every passing hour felt heavier than the last. Maya had stopped counting how many mornings she had woken up to the clanging of cell doors and the sharp sound of guards shouting orders. Life inside the jail had become a loop. The same tasteless meals, the same cold air, the same ache in her heart. Yet despite everything, she refused to lose that fragile spark of hope Officer Daniels had given her. She kept telling herself that the truth always came out, somehow, someday. But deep inside, doubt began to creep in. What if no one ever believed me? What if Eli forgets my face? Her stomach twisted at the thought. She would picture her little brother sitting alone, waiting, crying himself to sleep. Every night she whispered into her blanket, "Hold on, Eli, I'll come home. I promise." Then one grey morning, something strange happened. A guard appeared at her cell door and said, "Thompson, you've got a visitor." Maya's heart skipped. "A visitor? Who?" The guard shrugged. "Kid says he knows you from the boutique." Maya blinked in confusion. "The boutique?" Her heart started to race. Maybe Mrs. Miller had finally realized her mistake. Maybe she came to apologize. She followed the guard down the hall, her hands cuffed loosely in front of her. Her stomach churned with anxiety and hope all at once. The visiting room was quiet, separated by a thick glass window with a small metal phone on each side. Maya sat down and looked through the glass, and froze. It wasn't Mrs. Miller. Sitting across from her was a teenage boy, maybe 19, with messy brown hair and nervous eyes. He wore a faded blue hoodie and looked like he hadn't slept in days. Maya hesitated, then picked up the phone. "Do I know you?" He nodded quickly. "Yeah, I'm Jacob. I used to work part-time at Miller's boutique in the storage area. You probably don't remember me." Maya frowned, trying to recall. "Oh, yes. You were usually in the back unpacking boxes, right?" Jacob nodded. "That's me." His voice trembled slightly. "I've been watching the news about you." "About what happened?" Maya's eyes filled with tears. "Then you know I didn't do it. You know I wouldn't steal." Jacob leaned closer, lowering his voice. "That's why I'm here, because I think I know who really did it." Maya's entire body went still. What do you mean?" He glanced around nervously, as if afraid someone might overhear. "I shouldn't even be telling you this, but I saw something that night. The night the jewelry was stolen." Her heart pounded. "Tell me, please." Jacob swallowed hard. "I was supposed to drop off some supplies late that evening. When I got there, I saw Mrs. Miller's son, Ryan, sneaking into the boutique. He had the spare key his mom keeps in her office. I thought it was strange, but I didn't say anything. He's the owner's son, you know. I figured maybe he had permission." Maya gripped the phone tighter. "Ryan, are you sure?" Jacob nodded. "Positive." And the next day, when the police came, he was acting weird, nervous, jumpy. I overheard him arguing with his mom about money. Something about losing too much again and needing cash fast. Maya's eyes widened. "Money? You think he stole it because of that?" Jacob looked down. "I'm sure of it. He's been gambling online for months. Everyone in town knows he's in debt. I just didn't have proof. But now, seeing what's happened to you, I can't stay quiet anymore." For a moment, Maya couldn't speak. Her mind was spinning, her heart thudding so hard she could hear it in her ears. "You have to tell the police. Please, Jacob, you have to." He nodded firmly. "I will. I'll go to them today. I'll tell them everything I saw." "You don't deserve this, Maya." Tears rolled down her cheeks as she pressed her hand against the glass. "Thank you. You don't know what this means to me." Jacob's eyes softened. "You were always kind to everyone at the store, even me when others didn't notice. I should have spoken up sooner. I'm sorry it took this long." Maya shook her head. "You're here now. That's what matters." They both sat in silence for a few moments, two people bound by a truth that had been buried too long. Finally, the guard tapped the window, signaling the end of visiting time. Jacob stood up quickly. "I'll do it today. I promise. I'll make sure they listen." Maya gave him a faint, grateful smile. "Be careful, okay? If Ryan really did this, he might not want the truth coming out." "I'll be fine," Jacob said. "You just hold on a little longer." And then he was gone. As the guard led her back to her cell, Maya's steps felt lighter than they had in weeks. Her heart was still beating fast, but for the first time, it wasn't out of fear, it was out of hope. Someone out there finally knew the truth. That night, she sat on her bed, staring at the faint light streaming through the bars. She whispered into the darkness, "Maybe this is it. Maybe God finally heard me." And for the first time since her arrest, she allowed herself to smile, because somewhere outside those grey walls, the truth was beginning to move, and it was coming for her freedom. The next morning, Maya woke up with her heart racing, but for once not from fear. Hope buzzed faintly inside her like the first light of dawn after a storm. She couldn't stop thinking about Jacob's promise. Would he really go to the police? Would they believe him? All morning she replayed their conversation in her head, word by word, clinging to every detail. Her breakfast sat untouched, her eyes fixed on the small square window high above her bed. She whispered a silent prayer. "Please let this be the beginning of my freedom." By noon, something unusual happened. Officer Daniels, the same kind-hearted guard who had once spoken gently to her, approached her cell. But this time his expression wasn't the usual mixture of pity and professionalism. It was cautious, curious, and maybe a little hopeful. "Maya," he said, unlocking the door, "the detective in charge of your case wants to see you." Her pulse quickened. "Detective, why? What happened?" Daniels gave her a small nod. "They said there's been new information." Those words sent chills through her. New information. Could it really be Jacob? The walk down the long grey hallway felt endless. Her heart pounded with every step. She entered a small interrogation room, but this time it didn't feel like a trap. There was a different air about it, a quiet tension. Detective Harris, the same officer who had arrested her weeks ago, sat at the table flipping through a file. He looked up as Maya sat down, his eyes searching her face. "Maya Thompson," he said slowly. "You remember a young man named Jacob Miller?" Maya nodded immediately. "Yes, he came to see me yesterday." The detective leaned back. "He also came to see us." Maya's breath caught. "He did?" Harris nodded. "He told us something very serious about Ryan Miller." At that name, Maya's chest tightened. "Mrs. Miller's son." "That's right." The detective's voice softened a little. Jacob gave a detailed statement. He says he saw Ryan entering the boutique on the night of the theft. He also mentioned Ryan's gambling debts and erratic behavior. We ran a background check. And let's just say the pieces fit. Maya's eyes filled with tears. "So you believe him?" Harris didn't answer immediately. He studied her, really studied her, maybe for the first time since this nightmare began. Then he sighed. "We reopened the case this morning. A search warrant was issued for Ryan Miller's apartment. And guess what we found?" Maya held her breath. The stolen jewelry, hidden in a box under his bed. For a moment the room was silent, except for the sound of Maya's heartbeat. Her lips trembled. "You found it?" Harris nodded slowly. "Every single piece, including the diamond bracelet you were accused of stealing." Maya's vision blurred as tears poured down her face. "Oh my God!" "It's over." "Almost," the detective said gently. "Ryan was arrested an hour ago. He's being questioned as we speak. He's already started to confess. He said he never meant for you to take the blame. That it just got out of control." Maya pressed her hands to her face and sobbed, not the broken, hopeless sobs she had cried so many nights before, but tears of release, of disbelief, of overwhelming relief. Officer Daniels, standing quietly by the door, swallowed hard, his own eyes glistening. After a few moments, Detective Harris spoke again, softer now. "I owe you an apology, Maya. We failed you. We assumed the worst without ever giving you the chance to explain." Maya lifted her tear-streaked face. "You just saw what you wanted to see," she whispered. "That's how it's always been." The detective looked down, shame flickering across his face. "You're right. But I promise we'll make it right. You'll be cleared of all charges by tomorrow morning, and the department will issue a public statement." The words hit her like a wave and cleared of all charges. For weeks she had been treated like a criminal. Now suddenly she was innocent again. When she was led back to her cell, it wasn't as a prisoner. It was as someone who had survived something no one should ever have to face. The guards nodded at her with quiet respect. Even the other inmates whispered congratulations. That night Maya didn't sleep. She sat on her bunk, looking up at the faint light through the bars, smiling through tears. The air somehow felt lighter, warmer, like the first morning after a long, dark storm. In her heart, she whispered, "Thank you, Jacob, thank you, God." The next day she was officially released. The heavy metal doors opened for her one final time, but this time the sound wasn't painful. It was beautiful, like freedom ringing. Outside, Officer Daniels handed her a small paper bag containing her belongings, her clothes, her phone, and a faded picture of her and Eli. He smiled softly. "You're free, Maya, go home." She took the bag with trembling hands. "Thank you for believing me even when others didn't." Daniels nodded. "I never stopped." As she stepped out into the bright sunlight, the wind touched her face, fresh, clean, alive. The world outside hadn't changed, but she had. She had walked through injustice, humiliation, and despair, and come out the other side stronger, braver, unbroken. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this wasn't just her victory. It was for every person who had ever been silenced, doubted, or wrongly judged because of who they were. Her story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. The morning air hit Maya's face like a promise, fresh, crisp, and full of possibilities. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't waking up to the sound of metal bars or the harsh echoes of guards shouting. She was standing under the open sky, breathing air that didn't smell of fear. She closed her eyes and let the sunlight touch her face. Freedom. It didn't feel real yet. Her lawyer, a kind public defender named Ms. Carter, stood beside her, smiling. "You're officially cleared, Maya. The charges have been dropped and your record will be expunged." Maya's voice trembled. "Thank you. I still can't believe it's over." Ms. Carter nodded softly. "You deserve your life back. What happened to you should never happen to anyone." Maya took a deep breath and looked around. The world seemed brighter, more alive, the colors sharper, the sounds louder. Even the breeze felt like a whisper from God saying, "You made it." But as the initial rush of freedom began to settle, a new feeling crept into her heart. Fear. Because though she was free, she knew things wouldn't be the same. People had seen her mugshot. They had whispered behind her back. The internet had judged her without knowing her story. Would they ever see her as anything other than that girl who went to jail? Still, she couldn't go home without seeing the one person who had kept her heart beating through it all. Her little brother, Eli. When she arrived at the small foster home where he was staying, her hands shook. What would he think? Would he still love her after everything? The foster mother opened the door, smiling kindly. "He's been waiting for you," she said softly. Maya stepped inside, her heart pounding, and there he was, Eli. He was sitting on the couch, clutching the same old stuffed bear he used to sleep with. When he saw her, he froze. His eyes went wide. Then, without a word, he jumped up and ran to her. "Maya!" he cried, throwing his arms around her waist. She dropped to her knees and hugged him tightly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Oh, Eli, I missed you so much." "I knew you didn't do it," he said, his little voice shaking. "I told everyone you didn't." She laughed through tears, holding him even closer. "You were right, baby. You were right." In that moment, all the pain, the fear, the loneliness, it all melted away. All that mattered was this embrace, this proof that love could survive even the darkest storm. Later, as they sat together, Maya told Eli gently, "It's going to take some time, but things will get better now. I promise." Eli looked up at her with his innocent eyes. "Will we ever go back home?" Maya hesitated. Their old apartment had been sold. Her job was gone. But she smiled anyway. "Maybe not the same home, but we'll make a new one, together." That night, Maya lay awake in her temporary shelter bed, thinking about everything that had happened. The world outside might not change overnight. People might still stare. Some might still judge. But she couldn't let bitterness poison her heart. She remembered Ryan, the boy whose greed had destroyed her peace. The boy whose lie had almost ruined her life. Part of her wanted to hate him, to see him rot in jail like she had. But as she stared at the ceiling, something inside her whispered, "Don't let him keep you prisoner too." The next morning, she asked Ms. Carter for permission to visit Ryan in jail. When she walked into the visiting room, Ryan looked nothing like the confident young man she remembered. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped. He couldn't even look at her at first. "I didn't think you'd come," he said quietly. I didn't think I would either, Maya replied softly. But I needed to see you. He swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Maya. I didn't mean for things to go that far. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out. Maya studied him, her expression calm but firm. You let me sit in that cell. You watched me lose everything. Do you know what that felt like? He nodded slowly, tears filling his eyes. I know. I'll never forgive myself. Maya sighed and looked down. I'm not here to make you feel worse. I just needed to say, I forgive you. Ryan's head jerked up. You, what? I forgive you, she repeated, her voice trembling but steady. Because I can't carry that pain anymore. You already took my freedom once. I won't let you take my peace too. Ryan broke down, covering his face with his hands. Maya watched him for a long moment, then stood to leave. As she walked away, she felt a strange lightness in her chest, not because the past was erased, but because she had chosen to let it go. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant reclaiming her power. Outside the jail, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Maya looked up and whispered, "Thank you for giving me strength when I had none." Then she turned and walked forward into a new chapter, with her head high and her heart free. Weeks passed since Maya's release, but the memories of those cold cell walls stayed with her, not as chains, but as reminders. Each time she closed her eyes, she could still hear the clanging of metal doors, the cries of women who had lost hope. The echo of her own prayers whispered into the darkness. But now those memories didn't haunt her. They drove her. Maya realized something powerful. Her story wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every person who had ever been judged unfairly, silenced or forgotten because of their color, their class, or their circumstances. She could have stayed quiet. She could have started over, pretended none of it happened. But Maya knew deep down that silence was a kind of prison too. So one morning, she made a decision that would change everything. She sat down at a borrowed laptop in the community library and began to write. Her fingers trembled as she typed the title, "They Took My Freedom But Not My Voice." It wasn't easy reliving those moments. Each word felt like reopening an old wound. She described the night the police came, the fear in her brother's eyes, the humiliation of being handcuffed for something she didn't do. She described the nights in jail, the loneliness, the doubt, the small acts of kindness that kept her alive. And finally, she wrote about forgiveness, how she chose to free herself from hatred, even when the world hadn't been fair. When she finished, she uploaded her story to social media with trembling hands. At first, she didn't expect much. Maybe a few people would read it, maybe a few words of sympathy. But what happened next took her breath away. Within hours, her story spread like wildfire. Thousands of people began sharing it. Teachers, activists, students, even journalists. Hashtags like Justice for Maya and Her Voice Matters started trending. Messages flooded in from mothers, from former inmates, from people she'd never met. One woman wrote, "I've been through something similar. Thank you for speaking for all of us." Another said, "Your story made me cry. It made me believe again in the power of truth." News outlets began reaching out for interviews. Local reporters wanted to feature her on evening broadcasts. National shows called her story a symbol of modern injustices and hope. At first, Maya hesitated. Cameras made her nervous. But then she thought of Eli, of the look in his eyes when he said he knew she didn't do it. She thought of the women still behind bars, praying for someone to believe them. So she agreed. When she appeared on live television for the first time, her voice shook at the beginning. The bright lights, the microphones, the studio audience, it all felt overwhelming. But when the interviewer asked her, "Maya, what do you want people to take away from your story?" she found her strength. "I want people to remember that the truth has a voice," she said. "And sometimes that voice belongs to someone society tries to silence. I was taken to jail for a crime I didn't commit, but I survived because I never stopped believing that justice still matters. No one should ever have to prove their humanity just to be believed." The studio went silent. Then applause erupted. From that day, Maya became more than just a survivor. She became a symbol of courage. She started visiting schools, community centers, and youth programs, telling her story to young people who had lost faith in the system. She told them, "Your pain is not your end. It's your beginning. She worked with non-profit organizations to help wrongly accused individuals get legal help. She even launched a small foundation named the Second Chance Project, offering scholarships to children of incarcerated parents, kids like Eli. One day, as she stood on a stage speaking to hundreds of people, she noticed a familiar face in the crowd, Jacob. After her speech, he walked up to her, smiling. "I told you the truth would come out," he said warmly. Maya laughed, tears in her eyes. "You were right, and you helped make it happen." Jacob nodded. "You turned pain into purpose, Maya. That's something special." She smiled back. "We both did." As the event ended and people came up to thank her, Maya looked around, at all the faces filled with hope, at the people holding signs that read, "Believe the innocent and justice for all." She realized then that her voice had done something powerful. It had created ripples that could change hearts, maybe even the world. That night, as she walked home with Eli's small hand in hers, she looked up at the stars. The sky was wide and endless, just like her journey. "Do you think things will really change one day?" Eli asked softly. Maya smiled, squeezing his hand. "They already are." Because Maya had learned something no prison could ever teach her, that freedom isn't just the absence of bars. It's the courage to rise, to speak, and to keep believing, even when the world tries to silence you. And so, the girl who once cried alone in a dark cell became a light, a voice for the voiceless, a reminder that even in the darkest nights, truth and hope can still shine through.